Least common denominators, or LCM. You thought these would never come back, and yet here we are.
Why you bully me?
You won't get anywhere in life if you can't find least common denominators, because you need them to add and subtract fractions, which if you can do that, then you'll be better off than half the population. Alright, so if you have two fractions, such as 1 over 2 and 1 over 3, the denominators are 2 and 3. Now, the ultimate goal is for both fractions to have the same, or common, denominator, that is the smallest or least value possible. That number is then called the least common denominator, or LCD. So if instead I have 3 over 6, which is equal to 1/2, and 2 over 6, which is equal to 1/3, then I see that both fractions now have the same denominator, and that 6 is the common denominator. But where did I get the 6 from? You can't just pull out a random number out of your butt. The new denominator must be a multiple of both denominators you started out with. Okay, so what is a multiple? Multiples are the numbers that you see when you keep multiplying a number out, like in a multiplication table. For example, the multiples of 2 would be 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on. And the multiples of 3 would be 3, 6, 9, 12, and so on. When you see the very first value that is a multiple of both numbers, then that becomes the least common multiple, or LCM. So here, 6 is the first number that is the multiple of both 2 and 3. So looky here, the LCM is the least common multiple of a set of numbers, and if those set of numbers happen to be denominators of fractions, then that LCM is also called the least common denominator, or LCD. Once you find the LCD of two or more fractions, it's like they're on the same radio frequency and can talk to each other, and that's when you can do things like add or subtract them. So if we stick with our original problem, we said that our LCD was 6, so now I can go back to my two fractions and change the denominator to 6, like this. So for 1/2, that will equal something over 6, and for 1/3, that will also equal something over 6. And by now, someone should have pounded into your head that whatever you do to the denominator, you also have to do to the numerator. So for 1/2, I have to multiply this 2 by 3 in order to get the 6. And if I do the same to the numerator, I would have 1 times 3, which is 3. And I'll end up with 3/6 over here. And then for this 3, I have to multiply by 2 to get to 6. And I do the same for the numerator, so 1 times 2 would get me 2 over 6. So now the two fractions become 3 over 6 and 2 over 6. They are the same fractions as before, but now they just share the same denominator. Now most of the time you'll be able to find the LCM in your head or make quick guesses. But what about something like 5 over 16 and 7 over 20? Where maybe it's not so easy to list out the multiples. If we start making a table, it would look something like this. So we have 16, the multiples of 16 would be 32, 48, and then for 20, we'd have 20, 40, 60, and it keeps getting higher, right? Ain't nobody got time for that. I can't even count that high. So here's another method called the division ladder. And it goes something like this. So you have your 16 and 20. Now think of a number that will go into both 16 and 20 evenly. The higher the number, the better, but let's try something like 2. And we'll put the 2 on the outside like this. So 2 goes into 16 8 times, and 2 goes into 20 10 times. And we keep doing this until we can't go any further. So a number that goes into both 8 and 10 would also be 2 again. and 2 goes into 8 4 times, and 2 goes into 10 5 times. And we can't go any further because there's no number that goes into both 4 and 5 evenly. So then you draw a big L for ladder, and you multiply all the outside numbers together. So you would have 2 times 2 times 4 times 5. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 4 is 16, times 5 is 80. So now this is your least common denominator, and we know what the bottom number needs to be. So this would be 5 over 16 would be something over 80. And for 7 over 20 would also be something over 80. And so we have to multiply 16 by 5 in order to get to 80. So we do the same for the numerator. So 5 times 5 is 25. And then over here, we have to multiply by 4 to get to 80. And so we do the same thing on top. 7 times 4 is 28. So now the two fractions we're going to be working with, they would be 25 over 80 and 28 over 80. The value hasn't changed, but we've made it so that they have the same common denominator. Now, if I weren't so lazy and I kept listing out these multiples, I would have 16, 32, 48, 64, and 80. And then over here it'd be 20, 40, 60, 80. And I would have seen, okay, 80 is our least common multiple. But we get to the same result. What if we need to find the LCM between 3 or more fractions? Well, we can still list out all of our multiples like we did when we had 2 denominators, but now we just need to have a match between all 3. So for 6, we'll have 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, 42. For 9, we have 9, 18, 27, 36. Okay, I see a match there, but then we have a third denominator of 4. So we'll do 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, still nothing, 28, 32, and 36. So there's our match. So 36 is our least common denominator. But listing out all of these factors was a little bit annoying, so why don't we try the ladder method? So the ladder method with 3 or more numbers is a little bit different, but we follow the same steps. So we list out the numbers out here, and we try and find a number that would divide evenly into all 3 numbers. But if you can't, this is the difference. You can still find a number that divides into some of these numbers. So here, there's not a number that would go into 6, 9, and 4 evenly. But there is a number that would go into 6 and 9. So 3 would go into 6 2 times, and 3 would go into 9 3 times. But it would not go into 4 evenly. So what we do is we bring down the 4 without making any changes, and then we try again. So again, there's not a number that goes into 2, 3, and 4 evenly, but there is a number that would go into 2 and 4 evenly, and that number would be 2. So 2 goes into 2 1 time, and 2 goes into 4 2 times, but it would not go into 3, so we just bring that 3 down. Now at this point, there's not a number that would go into 1, 3, and 2, or 1 and 3, or 2 and 3. So we're kind of done here, and this is when we draw our L shape. And we just multiply the outside numbers again. So 3 times 2 times 1 times 3 times 2. And that would equal 3 times 2 is 6, times 1 is 6, times 3 is 18, times 2 is 36. So here is our least common denominator using the ladder method. These are the two best ways to find the LCM. Once you have the LCM, you can start adding and subtracting fractions, which I'll have a separate unit on that. But if you want some more LCM, I have another examples video which I'll link below.